Welcome back to the We Married the Family podcast. I hope you guys are having a good start to 2025. I'm carrying on with the topic of in-laws, and in today's episode, I want to discuss the idea of patience during hardship. I'll be talking about it from a cultural and an Islamic perspective, sharing the big misunderstandings that we have about patience, what true patience really is, and how it can help you in your growth. On one hand, it feels like patience is reserved for women in our patriarchal society so that they continue to put up with culturally imposed expectations. And it can be the most harmful and negligent advice to give to a woman who's suffering at the hands of her in-laws or her partner. It's one of the things I find most frustrating because people's idea of patience has become something that's oppressive and sometimes abusive, when actually, if it's embodied in its true meaning, it's liberating and absolutely transformational. I really believe in cultivating patience. I think it's a beautiful quality that brings you closer to God. But I want to differentiate between that type of patience and the misconstrued version. So in this episode, you'll gain clarity on the difference and understand whether you're advising others and yourself to practice patience in the right way. A really common misunderstanding is that patience is the same as tolerance. A daughter-in-law who begins struggling with her in-laws often perceives her struggle as a lack of something within herself. So she'll say to herself, I just need to be more patient. But what she's really saying is that she needs to learn to tolerate the things that she doesn't agree with. That she needs to be okay with things that she's not okay with. To put up with others' bad behavior and to tolerate mistreatment. And when she talks to her husband or friends or even family members, they might give her the same advice. Just be patient, it'll get better. Just be patient, it's not that bad. Just be patient, nobody's perfect. And what they're all saying is you need to tolerate more. But no, you never need to be more tolerant towards anything that's harming you. This misinterpretation of patience is detrimental to a person's well-being. It suppresses their emotions and needs, and it can lead to feelings of powerlessness, to burnout, resentment, poor mental health, and have a negative effect on relationships. Let's say you're a daughter-in-law who's been living with in-laws for a few years. You initially tolerated some criticisms and gave people benefit of the doubt. But now things have happened too many times and you're feeling really tired and hurt and angry. This is how tolerance disguised as patience starts to break down. Because instead of being about growth, it's about enduring harm. Giving the advice of being patient in this way is a form of spiritual bypassing, where people use religious texts and beliefs to avoid the actual issue, whether intentionally or unintentionally. People often refer to the verse in the Quran where God says, seek help through patience and prayer. But what is God really saying here? He is saying to seek help through patience. He isn't saying to suppress your emotions or your needs or to sit idle and powerlessly and helplessly in the middle of your difficulty. He's not saying to wear yourself down to the point of losing your mental and physical health. True patience does the opposite of these things. It supports and strengthens you. How can we seek and gain the help that comes through patience if we're using the inaccurate version of patience? If it's not helping you, you're not using it in the right way, and we can see that in this short verse. Let's say you want to move out from your in-laws. You're unsure of any concrete path at the moment, so you're in this limbo. If you're tolerating this period begrudgingly, it would look like continuing to be angry at the situation, feeling hopeless, thinking that it's never going to change, and continuing to miserably sacrifice yourself. It doesn't sound very helpful, does it? In a state of patience, this period of endurance would involve actively making things easier and healthier for yourself whilst you're still living there. Having empathy for yourself and with others, feeling calm and contained, knowing that the change that you want is coming. Someone might say to you, just be patient, it took me 10 years before I moved out. Another person might say, if you're patient now, you'll be rewarded later. Both of these pieces of advice have potential to be harmful and helpful, depending on how the word patience is used. What you also need to be aware of is how you're interpreting patience yourself. When you say to yourself, I just need to be more patient, What is it that you're really asking yourself to do? Is it really to cultivate patience, or is it to tolerate more harm? From both a Western perspective and an Islamic perspective, patience is about maintaining a calmness within your behavior and your emotional state in the face of adversity. It's about what you do during a hardship and how you do it, so it has both a behavioral and an emotional component. Like in the example of waiting to move out, you can be in a difficult situation and be angry and annoyed during it, or you can be in a difficult situation and be calm and peaceful. Patience involves several different actions and qualities, including waiting, knowing when to act, being able to look at the bigger picture, delaying gratification, and having self-awareness and self-regulation. Therapeutically, Western models don't necessarily focus on patience itself. If you go to some therapist and you talk about your situation with your in-laws, some of them will start working with you to find solutions for you to move out instead of taking your context into account. But that's another story. But there are ways that therapy can be helpful in improving patience, even if they don't call it that. One is where you might work on expanding your window of tolerance to your own emotions. This is a process where you gently learn to hold bigger emotions without going into overwhelm or shutting down. This is not about tolerating harm, it's about emotional containment and regulation. You can also work on responding to situations rather than reacting impulsively. If you think of impatience, it's hasty, brash, inconsiderate. And our culture these days is very fast paced, so it's easy to fall into impatience. But through improving your self awareness and engaging in somatic work, learning to regulate yourself, you can create a pause between an incident and your response. Or going further than a pause, you can open more space and time between the trigger and how you respond. So rather than acting in haste and with impulsivity, you're responding with more composure. You might also work on building your self-agency, so you're reclaiming your power and not remaining powerless in your situation. These are some examples of very helpful and necessary skills to learn that can improve patience. But going beyond this, patience has a lot to do with your heart health, not physically, but your spiritual heart. The word sabr in Arabic translates to patience and perseverance. It's also one of Allah's names, as-sabur, the patient and enduring. God is patient with us in that He gives us our whole lives to do good, to turn back to Him at any moment, any number of times, no matter how many times we stray away from Him. We also have time between, when we commit a wrongdoing and then it being written by the angels. So we have opportunity to reflect, retract, and erase it. There are lots of other attributes within this too, including God's mercy, His forgiveness, His wisdom. But how does all of this apply to you and your situation with your in-laws? These are ways that we can be patient with others because we know that humans make mistakes. We know that people forget things. We know each person has their own weakness and their own shortcomings. But don't forget that doing good goes hand in hand with preventing evil. So if people are wronging you and harming you, you need to stop having this holier-than-thou attitude and start seeking justice for yourself. Which, by the way, is also an attribute of God. He is the just. He's the one who takes to account, the one who reckons. But for some reason, we tend to overly emphasize the mercy, patience, and forgiveness when it comes to difficult people and relationships. If you're overly tolerant, if you're forgiving, pleasing, appeasing, ask yourself where in your life and your relationships could you hold yourself and others to account? What wrongs are occurring in your life that need to be put right instead of being dismissed? Where are you allowing harm to yourself, and what could you do to prevent this? This applies not just to you as a daughter-in-law, but to your partner and his family. Having true patience is also about your relationship with God, as we're starting to touch on here. Your trust in Him and His wisdom, your reliance on Him, your surrendering to Him. And if you don't have a relationship with God where you feel this trust and this closeness, then your hardship can be the doorway to facilitate this. From a Sufi perspective, there are different stations of patience, and one of them is the patience in trials and decree. This is a place where there's possibility for deeper transformation, and where you can ask yourself things like, what is God asking of me in this situation? What is this trial showing me? this event that's been decreed for me, what keys does it hold for my soul? Going to these depths instead of staying in the anger and the blame and the self-pity are what makes the trial a purification for you, a purification for your heart. You obviously feel your feelings and you transform through them. The anger that you have, you can allow that to fuel your advocacy for justice. You can transform your self-pity into purpose and value-driven action. We also often hear patience paired with beauty in the phrase sabrun jamil, beautiful patience. So patience isn't something that's ugly, angry, hasty, and fiery. It comes with beauty, and that beauty includes things like compassion and generosity. If you're truly cultivating patience within yourself, you'll also be discovering God even in your difficult moments. You'll see the good in others and treat others and yourself kindly, but not in a performative way. It comes from the inside with sincerity in your heart. That's how the transformation occurs with patience. You might see the outer manifestation of someone's actions, but also have the ability to see beyond that manifestation and seeing the goodness within all people and in all situations. You can see how there are different layers to this. If you're trying to be patient with your in-laws, but then any chance you get, you're bad-mouthing them, then what is it that you're cultivating? There are parts of you that might still need to process some emotions or reorient yourself to what you truly value. One question that I love to ask is, if you were a few years ahead and you were to look back on yourself in this moment, in this difficulty, you can see the way that you're feeling, thinking, and behaving. How would you feel about yourself and what you're doing? Being able to zoom out and see things from this bird's eye perspective helps you to reflect on yourself and the situation in different ways than you would if you're just reacting in the moment. It also gives you an opportunity to see where and how you'd like to develop as an individual. In what ways would you actually be happy and proud of yourself for dealing with this situation? And how is that different to what you're actually doing right now? Becoming patient is not something that happens overnight. And if you're patient in one situation or with one person, there will be another situation that's more difficult. Or if you're patient with something one day, you might struggle with it the next. This is completely normal. We're not saints. What we're seeking to do is to improve the state of our hearts through these occurrences and through our self-awareness and on an ongoing basis. It's why our family relationships can be the most challenging and come with the most reward, because there is always something they provoke within us. And with so many of us experiencing issues with in-laws, I do believe that this is an opportunity to create positive cultural change within our generation, but also for the next generation. Patience is something for the individual to cultivate within themselves. It's not something to force onto anyone. It's not a means to control a person or to abuse them. A daughter-in-law does not have to endure the suffering at the hands of others to show that she's patient. Because, as you'll hopefully know through listening to this episode, enduring suffering doesn't mean that you're patient. But because patience can strengthen within adversity, your difficulties with your in-laws is an area, an environment where this quality can strengthen too, just like it could with any other difficult person or environment. But to really be patient, you have to be honest about your feelings. Maybe this thing that you're struggling with isn't something that you need to be patient with. Maybe this situation or relationship requires something different from you. I don't think we need more women who practice misconstrued patience. We need more honest women. We need women who take action against wrongdoings instead of avoiding, enabling, or justifying them. We need more people who will stand up for justice within their own families, not people who make excuses. Patience really is a virtue, and the only way that we can practice it and nurture it is through facing hardship. But make sure you're practicing it the right way so it helps you and doesn't harm you. If you've benefited from today's episode, do like, comment, share, and subscribe. If you've been affected by anything discussed in today's episode, then do seek support that you need. You can join my daughter-in-law's membership group via the link below, or book in for one-to-one therapy with myself or another therapist.